Hello YouTube, Dave here again. It is day 4 of our Goblin test week. Just earlier this morning I uploaded my video making the 4th edition character. Now I did decide that I am going to make a bonus video for today, and I'm going to do that using D&D Essentials to make a first level fighter, and I'm going to run it through some test combat similar to what I did with Tar Markvar. Now, just a quick note and an unfortunate aside. If you're looking at the character sheet that I have here versus the one that's in the thumbnail, there was an incident where my coffee got knocked over, and it did get all over the character sheet, and fortunately everything else is pretty much okay. Like, that was the only thing that really got affected, but it still is kind of unfortunate because I had a sheet that actually came with my D&D Essentials starter set that I had photocopied. I don't use the originals, but anyway, so we got our character here, and I'll go over it in a moment. I'm also going to have it go up against a bunch of first level, or goblins that you would encounter at first level. So, just to show off the goblins here, I'm using the Goblin Warriors. And I copied down their pertinent stats on a piece of paper because I don't want to have the book open the entire time. So, but this is just sort of what we're up against. And I'll put the monster manual aside here. So let's just look at the character itself. So with D&D Essentials, there are two types of fighter class that come in the books. The first one is the Knight, and the Knight functions in a very similar manner to the standard fighter from the 4th edition hardcover. So I'll be honest, I didn't really want to use that build just because it's just way too similar, and a lot of their abilities are geared around the idea of protecting a party of characters. So this is only a single character combat. So what I decided to do instead was use the alternate build, which is the Slayer. And the Slayer is a fighter that isn't as proficient in the heavier armors. For example, the Knight is proficient in all the armors, and including plate, and the Slayer only goes up to scale and is not proficient with shields because they rely on two-handed weapons. So I built one of those, just a human fighter uses a greatsword, and I'll go over sort of their abilities and feats and the stuff that I gave them. So for starters, one of the first major changes with the D&D Essentials humans is they actually gain a racial ability. And again, my handwriting is really terrible, so I apologize for that, but I will go through and read it. So they get Heroic Effort. It's an encounter power, so they can only use it once per encounter, and it's something that is a reaction. So the trigger is either a failed attack or a failed saving throw. So in response, you can actually add a +4 racial bonus to that failed roll, which could turn a missed attack into a hit. It is an encounter power, so they can only do that once. They also get, as a Slayer, the Heroic Slayer ability, which lets them add a bonus to damage rolls equal to your dexterity modifier. And our stats are up here, so they had an array that you could use for their standard, but they had options. So what I chose was what was called the Double Specialist, and that had 2 16s, a 14, 2 11s, and an 8, instead of the 16, I think it was 16, 14, 13, 12, 11 and 10. So this one gave me 2 16s, but you know, at the cost of 2 11s and an 8. So not the most charisma in the world. My standard attack is with a greatsword, and because of my and I get a +9 bonus in total with this. One for the class feature, which is the weapon talent, which the regular 4th edition characters had. +4 for strength, +3 for proficiency, and I chose a feat called Heavy Blade Expertise, which is in D&D Essentials, which gives +1 to attack rolls and +2 to defense rolls, or not defense rolls, but just defense against opportunity attacks. For damage, I chose Weapon Focus Heavy Blades, which is a feat that was in the player's handbook as well, which just gives an extra 1 damage, in addition to my dexterity modifier damage that I get to add, and my +4 strength modifier. I get a damage roll, or damage bonus of +7. And the greatswords in 4th edition roll a d10, so it's a d10 +7 for these standard abilities. In addition, so where the other characters had things that revolved around augmenting attacks, or like having their own separate attacks, like Tide of Iron, Reaping Strike, and all that stuff, the Essentials characters have abilities that tend to just supplement standard attacks, and that's more or less it. So the Slayer has battle stances that they can enter into. And so with the battle stance is something that they basically assume this form, and unless it states otherwise, they should still be able to move, but that's not going to be an issue here. And it lasts until you are incapacitated, or you decide to change your stance, or drop your stance as a free action, I think it is, or a bonus action. So the two stances that I took at first level are Battle Wrath and Duelist Assault. So Battle Wrath is a stance that lets you deal an extra 2 points of damage for as long as you maintain that stance, and that's across the board. It doesn't matter, what goes on around you, you can do that extra +2 damage. The Duelist Assault gives you a bonus of +4 damage, but you and your opponent have to be separated from basically everybody else. So there can't be anybody else or anything else adjacent to the target creature, and you get a +4 bonus on damage rolls. In addition, the last ability that I have here is Power Strike. It's my encounter power for fighters. It's a reaction, and it triggers on a successful hit, and on that hit you deal an extra weapon die of damage. So I would do 2d10 plus whatever in the case of this character. So D&D Essentials did away with the martial classes having daily powers, just because it didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense when you kind of think about it contextually. Like, it makes more sense that you can kind of exert yourself in an encounter to deal one massive swing with your weapon, but then not have the energy to do that again. But to do that with like the 4 times weapon damage or 3 times weapon damage that you get with daily abilities just didn't quite make sense, because once you complete a rest, you should be able to, do everything with your weapon that you could before. So anyway, they did away with that, and they just had the, like I said, the stances for the Slayer. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. Now, I did name this character Regdar. And if anybody is familiar with the 3rd edition characters, 3rd edition started the idea of having iconic characters that they would use in like their artwork or things that involve like the class descriptions. And there were 2 different ones for the fighter. There was Tordek, the dwarf fighter, who was like your weapon and like one-handed weapon and shield character. But then they also had Regdar, who was just this massive brute of a human, and he had a greatsword. So I thought this would make a lot of sense to do that, and to have the greatsword wielding fighter for this video be named after him. Now he's also going to be, so I've got the miniatures set up here. Now he's also going to be living in the shadows of Tar Markvar, who, if you recall in the previous bonus video, I believe he had actually slain, I think it was 6 goblins on his own, as an underpowered 2nd edition AD&D character. And I'm interested to see how this is going to work out. And the main reason for that is a lot of people think that 4th edition is this huge overpowered version of the game, and it's easy to think that when you look at the numbers. Like at first level, being able to do a d10 plus 11 damage potentially is a lot. But the fact of the matter is that, just jotting down the Goblin's relevant stats here, the basic Goblin Warrior has 29 hit points versus Regdar's 31. So while Regdar can take more hits before he goes down, odds are the goblins are going to be getting more hits themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of how this works out. Now the goblin just does a d8 plus 2 for their standard attack. They get a +6 bonus to it, so I would need to roll an 11 or higher, meaning that I've got a 50-50 chance with the goblin anytime it makes an attack to actually hit. They do have an ability called Great Position, which I don't think I'm going to be able to use. But essentially what it is they get to add an extra d6 damage if they move 4 squares away from their starting position. at the beginning of the round. So wherever they started, if they were able to move 4 squares or more away from that spot, then they can deal an extra d6. It's probably not going to come into play. They also have Goblin Tactics, so if they're missed by an attack, they can use their reaction to shift 1 square, and you can see a little bit of the damage from the coffee there. I still have my coffee with me because it's relatively early in the morning when I'm recording this, but I did put it in my spill-resistant mug now, so instead of just being in my regular mug. So hopefully this won't be as much of an issue. Alright, and with that said, we're just going to jump right into it. So, just zoom back out here, aim ourselves down a little bit, and let's begin. So, I've got my sets of dice here. So, these are my Goblin dice, and I'm hoping that they'll show up relatively easily. I'm going to actually slide this up a little bit just so I can tilt this up and zoom in just a little bit. So these are the Goblin dice. They look like they show pretty good on the camera, and of course these are going to be the dice for Regdar, who only needs a d10 and a d20 for the combat. So let's begin our Goblin test, shall we? Let's start off with initiatives. Wow, whoops, I bumped that, but that was a 19. 19 and a 20, so Regdar goes on 19 plus his initiative modifier of +2, so he goes on 21. The Goblin rolled a natural 20 and they get a +5 bonus to their initiative, so they're going to go on 25, so the Goblin's going to get a chance to act first in combat. So as our battle begins, the Goblins starts advancing towards Regdar. This one gets into melee and is going to jab at him with his spear. So I rolled a 12, they get +6, which is 18, which beats the armor class of 17. So the first attack that the Goblin makes against Regdar actually hits. Regdar has 31 hit points, and he takes max damage. So he takes 10 damage, a d8. So 8 plus 2, so he's down to 21 damage on the very first turn. On Regdar's action, he's going to enter his... well, these aren't actually in the line like that. He's only going to have one of them on him at a time. So he's going to activate his Duelist Assault stance. So since there's nobody else around, these guys are just sort of to show how many I think he can go through before he dies. Regdar's going to make his attack. And Regdar rolls a 12, so slashing with his greatsword with renewed fury after getting poked by the Goblin spear. He's going to get a total of 21 to hit the Goblin's armor class, which is also 17. So that is going to hit. He's going to roll his d10 plus 11. So he's going to deal 19 damage to the Goblin. It's reduced down to 10 hit points. On to round 2. So Goblin is going to swing back now, and the Goblin actually misses, so he goes to poke at Regdar. Regdar just manages to slide out of the way as the spear stabs harmlessly past him. Regdar, in response, takes a massive swing with his greatsword, and it's actually going to fail as well as the Goblin manages to nimbly dodge aside as this massive blade comes swinging at his head. It's way too low an attack to add the +4, because that would still end up missing. It only hit an armor class of 13, so we're not going to use that ability right now. Moving back to the Goblin, with a renewed sense of urgency, he stabs Regdar again through the side, and he deals 7 points of damage. So Regdar went from 31 to 21 down to 14. And he is now considered bloodied, so he's been battered, he's been stabbed, his wounds are bleeding out. He's not having the greatest day. He's going to try to swing back and hopefully take out this one Goblin. 8 and 9 is 17 exactly, so that's going to hit. And that automatically will deal enough damage. The Goblin only had 10 points left. So with his duelist stance, he manages to defeat the first Goblin. However, he took quite a bit of damage in the process. So, next Goblin moves in, and we're going to go right to the start of initiative. So, it will be the Goblin's turn. So the goblin just charges in, a little bit intimidated by this massive hulking warrior, thrusts his spear meekly, which Regdar just deflects with his greatsword. He just smacks the spearhead away. Makes his attack, follow-up attack, and also misses. So the goblin manages to dodge backwards, using as Regdar tries to slide the greatsword up the shaft of the spear to hit the goblin kind of gets out of the way of that, thankfully. Moving on to his next attack, goblin is continuously gonna miss here. No, where Regdar did miss him, he is gonna shift one square just over this way, because why not? The fighter in the 4th edition hardcover would be able to get a free attack if that happened, but that's not an ability that the Slayer has. They're more about just dealing damage. But Regdar will attack again, and he rolls a 19 on the dice, so that is definitely going to hit. And he is going to just do his regular damage, I think, at this point, which is again another 19 damage. So our second goblin is also reduced down to 10. In retaliation, the goblin strikes, and this one is just paralyzed with fear. He can't get any effective attacks against Regdar. Regdar swings back, gets a total of 20, and kills his second goblin. Alright, so Regdar now with renewed fury waits for the next goblin in line to make his way up. The goblin goes to attack. This one's not quite as intimidated, however. So he thinks that, even though Regdar is able to kill 2 of his friends, he looks like he's showing signs of slowing down. So he gets in there and he stabs him right in the leg with a spear. And hits him pretty good. That deals 9 points of damage. So Regdar is down to only 5 hit points. So at this point in time, on Regdar's turn, he is going to use his second wind ability. Which I forgot to look up. I know you get a healing surge. You spend it, you get a healing surge, but I think you also get a bonus to your defenses until the next turn. So let's just see. Let me just look that up real quick. It's something that I meant to do and completely forgot about. So I'm just going to look that up right quick, and I'll be right back. Alright, and we are back. So I found my D&D Essentials starter set actually came with a set of ability cards for your first level characters. And so here we have the second wind ability. So it is once per encounter as a standard action. You can spend healing surge to regain hit points, and you gain +2 bonus to all defenses until the start of your next turn. So he's going to spend that and get 7 hit points back, so it's going to put him back up to 12. He's got a +2 to his armor class at this point, and I'm going to use his action point. The action point, you can spend it to gain another action type. So I'm going to spend that. So I'm just going to put spent, and I'm just going to mark that second wind has been used. Alright, so with his second wind, not with second wind, but with his bonus point, so he gets stabbed, he's bleeding out, he knows that he's not long for this world. He tries to push through it, so he just, kind of hulks up, even though I really don't like Hulk Hogan. Lets out a battle cry, and with this renewed anger and determination, he's going to start stabbing forward. So he's going to swing at the goblin with his greatsword. And that is a 19 on the dice, so that hits. He's also going to use his, at this point I'm going to use my power strike ability. So he's going to get a second D10 to add to this attack, +11. So there's a good chance, there's a decent chance I might be able to take this goblin out with the one swing. So we got 8 and 9, so good rolls for damage there, and +11. So that gets us 20. That gives us 28. So this goblin is reduced to 1 hit point, just with 1 attack. So this thing is just barely holding his innards in as he's trying to mount sort of a comeback of his own. Goblin swings. He does hit Regdar again. This time, though, because of the wounds that he suffered, it's a lot weaker of a thrust. So he just he jabs him, but it barely penetrates the armor that Regdar is wearing, only dealing 3 points of damage, reducing him down to 9. Regdar's turn. So he's going to swing back. He hits the goblin and manages to take him down. I'm not going to bother rolling with only 1 hit point left. Fourth goblin is going to move in, and we restart the initiative. So fourth goblin makes his attack, misses. Regdar, in retaliation, also misses. That is... I'm actually going to use my heroic effort here. Because I rolled a 4, he gets plus 9, which gives me a total of 13. Adding the plus 4 is a 17, which just hits the Goblin's armor class. So he's used all of his encounter abilities now. He's just down to his normal at will and attacks. He's going to deal 15 points. So 15 points to the goblin. So that brings it down to 14. The goblin, sensing that Regdar's time is short, makes another swing. I rolled the wrong dice, but he gets a 19. So jabs him once again with the spear for 8 points of damage. So Regdar is down to only 1 hit point. He's out of healing. He's going to make his defiant last stand similar to Boromir from Lord of the Rings, and going to make his attack. He misses. So the swing his last attempt may be in vain. However, the goblin also misses. So Regdar, even though he's barely holding on, still manages to bat the spear tip out of the way. And in retaliation, rolls a 15 on the dice, and manages to kill one more goblin. Alright, so that may be the last one that he gets, as another one moves up, sensing that Regdar is now easy pickings. So going to the start of initiative, the goblin will attack, misses. Regdar hits in retaliation. He's not going to go down without a fight, deals 15 damage again, which puts the goblin down to 14. The goblin, getting desperate now, manages to hit, and with that, the goblin takes his spear and manages to get Regdar right in the abdomen, right in the stomach, and Regdar goes down. So our fifth goblin is triumphant. And there you have it. So that was our 4th edition D&D character. For D&D Essentials, this was our two-handed weapon fighter. And I gotta be honest, I'm actually really surprised by the way that this turned out. He did not kill as many goblins as Tar Markvar did. Tar Markvar managed to down 6 goblins before he was defeated, and that was pretty good considering he only had, I think it was like 8 hit points. So that's one of the things that I find interesting about this idea, and it to me, now this isn't necessarily typical. This is only a single combat scenario, similar to what Tar Markvar's was. For the actual test, I'm going to be doing a series of 10 combats for each character that I make. I think I might actually do the same thing for Tar and Regdar, just to see kind of how they go. But at a quick glance, our 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons character, with almost pathetic stats, managed to kill more goblins than the more powerful 4th edition Essentials two-handed weapon fighting damage dealing machine. So I just kind of want to throw that out there because I kind of think that that may actually be the way that 4th edition really stacks up compared to the rest, is that it appears more powerful on the surface, but in reality, I mean, Regdar got hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so he ended up taking 6 hits, which is a lot compared to Tar Markvar, I think, was only able to take 3. But it still goes to show that as powerful as they are, the enemies are comparatively also more powerful. So again, Regdar was not able to kill as many goblins as the legendary Tar Markvar. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and again, I hope you're enjoying the series so far. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you guys are enjoying it too. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.